On Saturday, after a week home together, cooped up, my family and I went to a national park near Greenville, South Carolina. It's about an hour and a half away. It's wonderful to get out into the sun, into the fresh air, and into nature. And on the car ride up and back, we listened to my playlist of songs that we always listen to in the car, songs from the 80s and the 90s, from the early 2000s, but nothing after that. My daughter loves that playlist, and she said it before, but she said it this Saturday afternoon, that she wanted me to give her that playlist when she went off to college. That got me to thinking about legacy and inheritance. We're entering a very difficult time, and I want to ask, what do you want your legacy or your inheritance that you pass on to your family and friends from this time to be? What do you want that legacy, that inheritance to be? In Matthew chapter 14, we hear about the story of Jesus telling the disciples to get in the boat and row to the other side of the shore of the lake. And he goes by himself up on a mountain to pray after sending the crowds away. So there's some serious isolation that's happening. And about 9 hours into that boat ride, a storm comes up on the horizon, and the disciples start to get very nervous. But Jesus has already been in prayer for them, and he begins to walk across the water to them. Now, before Jesus arrives, they must have gripped the side of the boat. They must have cried out in fear. In fact, it tells us that they did. All of these things that I think you and I have probably been doing this past week. Rowing harder, gripping the sides of our little boats, maybe even crying out. I know I certainly have. I've woken up in the middle of the night, worried, fearful about certain things. But what the story about the disciples in the boat tells us is that the disciples were not doing one thing. They were not praying. That's okay, because Jesus was praying for them, and that was enough. And more than that, he was walking towards them. So he walks towards them across the water. They see him. They cry out, again in fear. And he says, "Do not fear. It is I." Our legacy during this time for our family and our friends, I hope, will be one of prayer, developing a rich, a deep, and abiding legacy of prayer. Your family, your children, your spouse, your friends, they need to see you leading in prayer. So turn again to prayer. Prayer at the dinner table, prayer over the phone together. I think that is the way that we can reach out in faith during this time to Jesus, who is already walking on the water toward us and will take our hand to lead us safely to the other side. See you this Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. on Facebook Live or on YouTube. Please join us at Foundation Presbyterian Church.